Hello, everybody. Welcome. Oh, I got echo. Oh no. But hello, everybody. Welcome to our Lovable Shipped lecture for today. My name is Talisha. I am the community lead at Lovable, and we have a new face with us. Brennan is here on camera. He's usually behind the scenes, but you all know Brennan. And then our guest lecturer today is Felix, who is also my coworker, works with me at Lovable. So excited. But before we get started with all the great stuff that Felix has to share with us today, and believe me, it's going to be really, really good, I do want to go over some housekeeping. So I do have a few announcements for everybody, but don't worry, I'm not going to take forever. So the first thing I do want to talk about is say congratulations, you completed your first week. Yay! And congratulations to everybody who submitted their first updates. I'm so excited for you. We've had thousands of people submit their updates. And we have opened up voting and feedback, which you have until tomorrow, midnight Pacific time, to vote on projects and give community feedback. Now, a lot of people are a little bit confused about how this works. When you go in to vote and give feedback, you will not see 1,000 submissions. You will only see 2 at a time, and you will do a total of 10. So you will only see 2, and you will vote between the 2, and you'll see a total of 10 projects to vote and give feedback on. Secondly, if you submitted your update this week, you will unlock your perks. So we have some fantastic perks from all of our sponsors and partners. We have over $3 million in perks, and they will be emailed to you on Wednesday. If you submitted your update, you'll get an email with perks. Also, the leaderboard will be available on Wednesday, so you can see where everybody ranks. If you want to know how the points works for voting in the leaderboard, be sure to check out the announcement in Circle. Okay. Now, I do know that a few people are having some issues with submitting your updates and voting on the SHIP platform. We are working on that. If you submitted your update, we did get it. Now that it's a new week, you might see not started or not submitted. But if you submitted it before last night, then we got it. So don't worry about that. If you're concerned, reach out to us and we will double check for you. But we are working to fix that kind of UI error that's happening right now. So last bit of housekeeping is please ask questions throughout the lecture. Make sure you put a Q in a colon. Yes, a Q and a colon so we can easily see which ones are questions, and we will try to get to as many as we can. Now, I would like to introduce our guest lecturer, Felix Haas. He was the lead designer at Mapify, helped scale Gorillas, joined Creandum as design advisor, founded product design and brand studio, became an angel investor in 15 plus startups, and a podcast host. And of course, he's currently doing design at Lovable. So I'll turn it over to you, Felix.
Thank you so much, Talisha. Hey, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. I was really looking forward for kind of do this lecture today. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you can elevate your projects with design. I will share some of the hacks that I've been using when building lovable projects. And then also maybe just like some general advice and learnings that I've had throughout the years when it comes to building products, making sure you're building something people want, testing your product, and kind of going through this entire journey from like 0 to 1. So let me share my screen. I put together a few slides that I think could be super helpful. And on top of that, I would love for you guys, so if we can maybe save like a few minutes once I go through the slides for you to also like come in with questions and like see what you guys are building and how we can potentially like, help everyone here elevate their lovable projects. So I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. and let's get started. So,
Okay, let me.
can you see my screen? Does that work?
Yes,
Awesome.
we see your screen. You're good to go.
Amazing. Cool. Then quickly, Talisha, thank you so much for the introduction. Quickly about myself. I'm a product designer. I have been doing design for the past 10 years or so. I started at a very early point of life in my career. Have always truly enjoyed designing products. I started in the hardware space, actually. So I started designing surfboards and like skateboards and just like came up with like, I don't know, like creative ideas until I discovered the beauty of building and designing digital products. And then when that hooked me, I got completely like obsessed about designing in the world of kind of apps, websites, building digital brands. The past years, I've built or like have been mainly working with multiple startups. Um, I was usually, or what I usually love doing was kind of partnering with startups at a very early point of time and then help them build and design their first initial products and help them establish a strong design foundation and make sure that the startups that I work with are kind of, really well equipped when it comes to building products. And at Lovable, I am working a lot on the actual product. So I'm quite excited to be here today and also talking to you guys. You guys are super important to us. You're the ones that are, building their dreams with Lovable. So I'm excited to be sharing some of the learnings that I think can be helpful for you. And then also, hopefully be a sparring partner for everyone that's participating here in the SHIP program. Cool. So if we think about design, I would love to kind of kick it off, I guess, with like three key learnings, and then we can dive into those in a little bit. So my biggest learning so far in the age of AI has been that AI is your best co-founder, right? I think what I'm so excited about is that we live in a time where you no longer need the deep technical know-how to build a fully functional product. You don't need an entire design system, a design team to build a really well-designed app. You no longer need a sales team to kind of market your product. All you need is AI. And what I find so exciting about it is that I guess we're entering the stage where you're no longer this like idea guy. So like a person that has an idea, but then, doesn't really know what to do with it. But instead, we're entering a new era where out of a sudden, the people that have ideas are the ones that are the most powerful, because all you need today is like an idea and then a few hacks, and we're going to walk through some of them today to bring your idea to life and like put it into people's hands. And interestingly enough, I've been like writing a little bit of an article about, if you look at some of the most successful companies out there, take Airbnb, Facebook, Dropbox, most of these companies started as side projects. And when I learned about that, I was so like obsessed with it, because if you think about it, like a side project is something all of us can do and start. And I guess many of us are doing that here, right? Like we're all having side projects. And the beauty is that you never really know what you end up building. And like, you could build the next Airbnb and it may look like a small little side project today, but if you put in the work and if you kind of participate in programs like these, you don't know where you can end up, right? And I just find that so exciting that with this like new co-founder that we have today, everything is possible. And I think especially when it comes to design and building products, you should make use of that. And I guess, the fact that you're already using Lovable is already like a super big step ahead. But let's dive into some of my other learnings that I had along the way for you to kind of see or like, pick some of those up. So I think one of my biggest learnings as a designer, as an entrepreneur, as someone that has worked with multiple companies and founders, is that the biggest moat or like, your biggest advantage to win in today's kind of industry is if you're really good in shipping, if you're really great at putting an idea out there, not waiting too long and like making it too perfect and then shipping it, but rather developing almost like a mindset that, from now on, everything you want to build, you want to make sure that you're testing it publicly outside. Um, and some of the best designers I know personally, they all have developed this mindset of, I'm not waiting until it's perfect. I rather ship something, put it out there, put it into people's hands, and then see kind of what is the feedback I'm getting, and then rather improving my product over a period of time. Um, but like this whole idea of, and that's my third point, building in public, I think, is more important than ever. Like personally, I used to be really transparent. I used to be a person that was like, back in the days when I would have an idea, I would probably not talk about it because I was like, okay, I have like the idea. I don't want anyone to copy it, and I would not really talk about it, and I would keep it for myself. I would lock myself in a room, and I would really like basically be the only user and the only customer myself. And then only if it would be really, really good, in my opinion, I would probably put it out. But now reflecting and having seen some of the most successful founders that I've worked with, the one skill they all have in common is, yes, they're really good at like shipping fast, what we just discussed, but they're also not scared of like public feedback. Um, because it's so interesting. Like when you guys are building something, then we usually always put in our own heart, right? And our own like soul into everything we build. And that's good because that means, it's personal and you care about what you do. But the reality is you're not building something for yourself. Maybe you are, and that's okay, but then it's really just like a side project and you want to keep it for yourself. But if you think about it from like a business perspective, and if you want to build something and you want to get customers, then you want to make sure that you put your product out there as early as possible, even if it's a scrappy feature or like a scrappy version. And I've seen many, many companies do this really well. Like if you have like a long-term vision, then the first thing I would do is like think about, okay, how can I bring this big vision? How can I bring it down to like a first minimal viable product, or where the name Lovable comes from, minimal lovable product. So what is like a very, very simple first feature, simple first website that I could use and put into people's hands to get feedback? And once you start doing that, and once you start iterating over time, you will see like the magic. So if we continue, I want to talk about, I guess, like 5 things today. So one is, how do you use Lovable and AI in general to get started from like an idea to ideally building a company, or at least building a product people pay for. And I guess the way I always measure whether I'm on the right track or not is by looking obviously into like metrics. So are people using my product? Are people telling their friends about my product? But one of the most important and like powerful metrics, I guess, is like, are people paying for that product? Because if people put money into whatever you're building, then it must mean you have truly solved a huge kind of problem for them. And I guess that could be like, or is something that is super important to keep in mind. All right, let's go through those like 5 points, and feel free to make some notes for yourself while we go through them. So first of all, whenever you start building something, I would highly recommend thinking about, I call it a quick brand. A brand at the end of the day is basically a way how you can express your values, and you can how you basically talk about what you care about. And so instead of jumping right into like building a product, before you do that, I would start thinking about, what is it I actually care about? Why am I building this product? Because the reality is, in kind of the world of AI, there are hundreds of thousands, not like millions of people building products. And the ones that stand out are the ones that are mm, best thought through, the ones where AI can no longer do the differentiation, but you do. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But like, a quick brand helps you stand out from others. And I guess the earlier you start thinking about that, the better. And you can use AI to like quickly get started. So, for example, what I would do is, if I would have an idea, I would probably start chatting with either Lovable or like, we have our like chat mode, for example, or even ChatGPT, and think about what is it that I want to build, and then what are the values I have? What are like my easy brand values? So like, how do I want to be perceived? Friendly, modern, like from a product perspective, what do I want my product to express? And then I would use that to build visual assets for my brand. So that could be a logo, for example, or a website. Obviously, you can build both a logo and a website using Lovable. But I guess the reason I'm bringing it up here is the all the AI models. The reality is a lot of the AI models out there, they're all the same. We at Lovable, we do, I guess, like a great job in making sure, understanding what is the best model for each task or like each prompt. But the reality is that AI models usually work the best if they have more context. If they have more context about who you are as a founder and what you're building. And so whenever I would build a new company or like build a new product, I would do this like first initial step and prompt my AI with like additional context before jumping right into like build me a website. I would, instead of saying build me a website, I would tell Lovable, hey, here's who I am. These are my values. This is how I want to be perceived. Can you help me craft a website based on this like quick brand guidelines that I shared with you? And again, those guidelines you can also create with AI, but like they should come from you. And then your output will already be 10x better than if you just jump right in. So think about this like before you're building your first product, website, feature, whatever. Then if we think about building a first product, I think the most important part here is you should, and that potentially goes back to this like ship early, just get started. Like, it doesn't matter how big your idea is or how complex your idea is. The best products in the world are basically a collection of hundreds of thousands of iterations. And the way you should be building a product in today's world is you should just get started with like a simple working product, and then you iterate it over time. And I collected a list of some of the best prompt hacks that I use personally when I build products with Lovable that I will share with you guys after my presentation, that you can use to build better products with Lovable. And it includes things like, here's how you should draft your first prompt. Here's buzzwords you can include to make the design better. Here's how Lovable understands better what you want. So one example, for example, something that helps me quite a lot is using images as references. So whenever you are describing an idea to Lovable, the way Lovable will best understand what you want is by looking at images. So for example, I screenshot a lot when I'm browsing through the web, and then I collect those screenshots and I would provide Lovable with those in order to create something. So for example, I have recently built like a new pricing page for like a fun project of mine. And then instead of just saying Lovable, hey, can you help me build a pricing page? Here's my idea. I would go on like mobbin.com or other resources. Again, it's part of my prompt guide that I will share. And I would look at what are the best pricing pages out there. And then I ended up looking at, for example, the pricing page of Linear or Stripe, depending on what kind of business you're building. And then I would take a screenshot and I would put that screenshot into Lovable, and I would give additional context, personalize it, and then Lovable would actually give me quite some nice outputs. Point 3, custom domains. I guess another really important point when starting out is gaining trust, winning trust from early adopters, early customers. Like, you want to make sure that because you're such a new brand and you're such a new product, and the chances that no one has heard of you are quite high, which is normal. Everyone starts like that. But I guess the more you think about how do I enable trust, even with my first product, the better. And you can connect a custom domain. I think that's an easy one. If you have like a first idea in mind, like a first name, I would probably look for like a nice little domain on United Domains or namecheap.com for like, yeah, like I would look at what is a nice name, and then I would connect my Lovable project with my own domain. So then it looks already a little bit more like someone has actually thought it through. And what I would also do to increase trust is potentially add some trust sections in my product, especially if you want to sell something, or like you have like a service, or you have a website or something else. Even if it's just a portfolio of yours, you want to make sure that people trust you. And you could, for example, include references or companies you've worked with, and like you include the logos and icons of these companies. And there are some really good ways of adding trust. And I would even, again, if we think back to like AI is your best co-founder, use ChatGPT or like our chat mode to chat with AI and like kind of figure out how you can increase trust on your product and website. And then last but not least, I mean, as you know, it really depends always on like the product you're building. But mobile is very often it's the most used device when it comes to building products and using products, interacting with products. It's what we have pretty much with us every single day, our mobile, like our phones, our smartphones. And so I see a lot of founders not thinking about that and only building for desktop and laptops and larger screens. But I think it's so important for you when you build a product that you think mobile first. And interestingly enough, I think we're also moving away from like a screen kind of product interface in the future, and we see that, for example, with Apple's latest design, that components and UI components are more fluid. They're becoming more dynamic, so they can actually adapt based on your screen size. So I would highly encourage everyone that even if you're building something on Lovable, make sure it works really well on mobile. Because chances are, when you share the link to friends or customers, the chances that they are opening that link on your phone is quite high. So you want to make sure that you nail it. And it's one prompt, by the way. If you tell Lovable to like mobile optimize your page, 9 out of 10 times it does a really good job by itself. Public testing. We've talked about that already briefly. So here are maybe 2 or 3 hacks. One, as I told you already, you are wrong until you test. The best people in the world, the best product people in the world, they're really, really good in testing and in not just listening to their own like gut feeling. And so what I established is the "can I buy you a coffee" hack. I'm not sure if anyone else is doing it, but a friend of mine, Patrick, and myself, when we were building a travel app back in the days called Mapify, where we were basically building an app that would allow people to book an entire travel experience with a few clicks only. And we had no idea if that's going to work or not. And so what we did up doing is we went to our favorite cafes in Berlin, in Germany, where I like spent most of my time. And we would go to the cafe, and where people would queue up to order a coffee, we would ask those people and be like, hey, can we pay for your coffee? And in exchange, do you have 10 minutes to look at our product and give us feedback? And since we were building a travel company, you know, our kind of target audience was really large. So it was quite a wide audience. But it was such an effective way to get non-biased feedback. Because the problem is, if you ask your friends and family to give you feedback on your product, then usually they're not 100% honest. And that's okay, because they also don't want to hurt your feelings. But you want to be really careful with the feedback you're getting. And so there's no better way in asking total strangers to get feedback. And a coffee costs, I guess, depending on where you live, let's say around like €5 or dollars. And if you do that maybe 2 or 3 times a day, then you spend $10 or $15 on, or even a bit more, on like super valuable product feedback. And that has just always worked out really well for me. And then maybe MVP to see if people will pay for it. Yeah, I guess that's also what we discussed a little bit in the beginning. The one thing is, people tell you they would use a product, But the reality is that doesn't mean they're actually using it. Um, Again, you want to make sure you're a bit careful with the feedback you're getting. People would usually only truly use your product if they also pay for it. That's always something you want to keep in mind. So, mm, how do you make sure that people are getting a lot of value out of your product? One way of doing it is figuring out if they would pay for it. Just something to keep in mind. And I would like always think about ways to kind of, yeah, think about like how could I test this? And like a first MVP with almost like a free trial and then some sort of a paywall popping up after 3 days and then seeing if people would still stick around is a good way of testing. All right, I gotta hurry a little bit, but we want to make sure that we are improving our product on a weekly basis. So I guess one of the biggest misconceptions is that people always think like I have to fundamentally nail my first product. I have to make it really, really great. And yes, while you can have that ambition, I think it's great. But please keep in mind that, and the same is true for design. Whenever I design something, I always keep in mind that it will never ever be the final design. Because the reality is the design will always evolve over time, always. There's not a single digital product out there that is high performing, that is not being improved on an almost like weekly basis. Like think about it, all the apps that you're using, they're constantly being improved. And that's just the reality of how digital products are being built. So you should have the same mindset. I guess it's way more important to kind of come up with something you can launch quickly, and then rather have that mindset of, okay, it's not perfect yet. However, I'm still going to launch it. I'm still going to publish it. I'm going to get actual feedback on it. And then I want to improve it a couple of percent, 2 to 5%, depending on like usage per week. And if you nail this, like if you improve your product on a weekly basis, you're on the best track ever. And if you enable that mindset, like establish that mindset, you're like one of the top product people in the world. AI, again, is your best co-founder. The best products, they run a lot of tests, actually. We do that also at Lovable. So we try out a lot of things. I think the way you should always think about it is it's a, in the world we live in, it's such a great playground for you to test different ideas. And even when you're building a website, the headline of that website can already be the part that makes the difference. And so let's say you're building a website. I would highly recommend to kind of think about ways of how you can test different components on that website. And so the headline would be one. You could test 3 different components against each other and see which headline sparks the most attention. And then basically take it from there. And again, use AI to kind of come up with these ideas and A/B tests. Product market fit, which is basically, product market fit is basically a term for like, once you found it, it basically means that you found a product that hit a spot in the market where people absolutely fall in love with it and pay for it. I guess Lovable is a great example. I guess we've hit product market fit in a way that we have a lot of people that absolutely love the product and they even pay for it. And we're so happy that we are building this tool that helps others to succeed. And while this is maybe like a little bit of a different scenario, the same is true for you. You want to make sure that you build something that actually provides value to someone else, especially when you think about it from like a business perspective. And so this whole idea of product market fit should constantly be kind of on your mind. And the way you reach it is by testing multiple things, different things, shipping something fast, getting feedback, and establishing that almost like as a daily habit. So I recently talked to a founder. He is super, super talented. And he told me that he's treating basically talking to customers calls the same way he's consuming food. So it sounds a bit weird, but like, it's like, as a founder, I almost think that talking to your customers is as important as eating food in order to survive. There's no other way. As a human, you need to eat, otherwise you're going to die. and you need to drink water for sure. But the same is true for building products. Like, you need to talk to people about it, and you need to talk to customers about it. Otherwise, you're going to die 100%, unless you're building something only for yourself. But if you want to build a business, and if you want to build something that attracts customers, you should at least have 1 or 2 slots per day blocked in your calendar and talk to users. And it's funny because when I do like some smaller like angel investing, and I talk to founders, I would usually ask them what their calendar looks like. So I would ask them, hey, I love your product. I think you have a great vision. Can you share your calendar with me? Like, what does your calendar look like? And the only reason I do that is not because I'm interested in like, their like free time or whatever. I'm interested in understanding whether they are spending enough time with users and customers. And the best founders I've seen so far are the ones that actually do that at least on a weekly basis. Best on a daily basis, but if you talk on a weekly basis to like people, you're already like moving in such a good direction. Cool. Then maybe last but not least, I have conducted 2 pieces that I think can be helpful for you. So one is an AI prompt hack guide for design specifically. So that contains a lot of like design hacks, how you can easily elevate the design of your Lovable app. So Talisha and the team, we're going to share that with you. And another one is something I've recently published. It's a little bit of a guide that helps you more from like a founder perspective. So how can you as a founder build something and kind of get customers and then iterate your product over time. So now I would love to open it for a few questions and see what people are interested in, and I'm like happy to talk about it.
Woohoo! All right, we have a lot of questions, and if you have more questions, please just put them in the chat, put the Q, so it's easier for us to see the question. So let's go with this first question. Boom, 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 boom. I had a complete rebranding of a design on Figma. I tried to transfer it on Lovable through the builder.io, but I failed. Do you have some tips or other tools for getting your Figma designs into Lovable?
Yeah, 100%. So I think the build.io integration I think it works, but it's not as strong. And I mean, you've experienced it yourself. I've also experienced it myself. What I usually do is I work with images. So what I explained a little bit earlier, what I do is I take screenshots of my Figma design, and then I would paste them right into Lovable. And then I would ask Lovable to rebuild my design based on the screenshot I shared. And maybe something to share here, Lovable is way better in executing one prompt after another, instead of you telling Lovable, hey, build me this entire app from like 0 to 1. So what I would do is I would probably take section by section and then take a screenshot and then describe that section and then let Lovable build it. And then you just walk kind of through the process. But it works usually better than like just prompting the entire design into one. It's usually never one prompt. It's always an initial prompt, and then you have to iterate over time.
A question that
sorry, just one thing I wanted to ask Felix. I think it would be helpful to people. How do you go about screenshotting things? Do you just screenshot the whole website, or are you screenshotting elements? What is your approach to that?
I guess that's a really good point, and I would probably, again, not give Lovable too much information, but rather focus on certain sections. So when I, for example, design a new website, I usually start with the hero section, and then I kind of scroll down and take it step by step. And the hero section I would do in a way that I would pre-design it in Figma, or just like keep like just get started in Lovable right away. But and then if I'm editing my hero section, I would change components after each other. So once I have my first hero section in place, I would then go into like the navigation. And I would start with the navigation, and then I would use the visual edit function to prompt elements of the navigation. And then I would use my buzzwords guide that I'm going to share here to make the navigation super sexy with like a few buzzwords. So it's just going to, look better.
Awesome. This is a question we get every live stream. How do you build in public without someone stealing your idea?
I think you should really not think about someone else stealing your idea, because the reality is the chances of someone having the exact same idea is pretty high. We're living in a world where many people have ideas. Like, everyone has ideas, everyone. But the difference is only the people executing those ideas are the ones who are winning. And so, and that's already, let's say 100% of people have ideas, only 20% actually start building that idea. And only, I don't know, maybe 5% are fine, like fully pushing it through. So you're competing with a relatively small amount of people. And it really comes down to the execution yourself. And I generally believe that it is way more valuable to build in public and actually get hands-on feedback from the outside world, which will fundamentally speed up your product development process, instead of not building in public and just keeping it for yourself, which will definitely slow you down, because then you're not gaining the insights that you need in order to succeed.
Okay, let's see. Abigail asks, is it better to prototype and then build an MVP or go straight into building an MVP? Do you see a difference between the two? And I feel like having Lovable kind of changes that answer a little bit.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely love the question. I honestly think there shouldn't be a difference. I think that your first MVP, or your first prototype is the perfect start for you, kind of to get out there and get feedback and see if it actually works. So obviously it has to function, right? So the only difference here that I would see is that an MVP should work, right? So when you put an MVP out there, then it should actually like solve an issue and it solve a problem. And a prototype maybe is a little bit more scrappy. But in an ideal world, I would skip the prototyping and I would go straight into MVP and rather figure out, okay, what is like the most useful MVP I can possibly build, and then put it out there and like get feedback on it. And just because I'm seeing currently the question, like which platforms do you use to build in public? I guess that's a good question. So I use LinkedIn, X, or the public. Like honestly, like walking into a cafe and buying people coffee and like just asking if they have 10 minutes for their time. But I guess like qualitative and quantitative testing is what we're looking at. So quantitative, go online and go big. So start posting on X, start posting on LinkedIn, be loud. And like qualitative testing, don't ask your friends because they're going to lie to you. Ask people that you don't have a personal connection to. And you can talk to strangers on the street, or again, do the I buy you a coffee hack.
Exactly. Okay, let's see. Okay, so this one is, if I'm in Lovable and I and my friend are giving same prompts again and again, will it generate the project? What is the temperature settings for Lovable? So I guess people want to know, why do different prompts result in different results? Or same
Yeah.
prompts result in different results. There you go.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's a little bit the reality of AI, so that if we both have the same prompt, the output will still be a little bit different. The way I look at it is, if you want to have like the ideal prompt output, again, it goes a little bit back to context. So the more context you provide before you're building, the better the output will be. It will be more personalized, it will be more relevant. And that has been a big game changer for me, that I would usually prompt Lovable and give it a lot of knowledge and a lot of like context before I start building with it, or even simultaneously, even doing it at the same time.
This is a great question. How long should you try pursuing something you are passionate about, but it does not seem to take off?
Yeah, that's I guess a super important question, and it's super hard. I get it. I honestly think that building something truly great takes time, and like, you know, I would definitely, if you're fundamentally like truly passionate about it, and if you think, you know, what you're building here is worth building and it solves a problem, then I would keep going as long as you can. and not give up too quickly. I think the real magic happens over time. The longer you build it, the more insights you gain. But what I always would keep in mind is, and again, it really depends on what you're building. But if you're building a business and if you want to get customers, then the one thing that should be important to you is understanding whether people would pay for that product or not. And if that answer continues to be no, then I would probably iterate or like think about pivoting and kind of turning direction. But if there's almost like a little bit of a, yeah, I can see myself pay for something like that, I would continue and like see where you end up. But it's a tricky one. I've been spending months building something, years. My first company was a photo sharing app. I've worked on it for 2 years. No one paid for it. It was my biggest passion project. I kept going. No one paid for it. So eventually I stopped it. But what I can tell you is it has been probably the biggest learning curve and biggest startup school ever, which was already worth the time.
Exactly. Also, famously, Lovable launched like 3 times before anyone cared. So you got to launch again and again. Keep trying. Keep putting yourself out there. And you have to wait for that moment. Everything, all the stars align, just like what happened with Lovable. Oh, what happened to everybody? Oh, there we go.
I just stopped the screen sharing.
Yeah. Okay, Natalie, as how do you balance getting the UX right before the UI? In other words, how much time do we spend adjusting the vibe design in tandem with the functionality?
Yeah, super good question. I think functionality should always come first, right? I guess you really want to make sure that you're building something that works. You're building something that solves a problem. You're building something that just from like a functionality point of view makes sense before polishing it. So I would always prioritize that part, and then you can make it pretty. But like the sexiest products in the market are the ones that actually work, right? And like are not the ones that are flashy, but then when you press a button, they break. So I would prioritize UX over UI, and keep in mind that you want to make it beautiful as well. But I would always build an MVP as like a scrappy version. Just build it, and if it works, you're already on the right track.
Could you please specify the possibility of integrating motion design elements on Lovable?
Yeah. So we have a few libraries that are automatically integrated. And Lovable is actually quite good in building animations and motion. And so when I'm building a website, what I usually do is I ask Lovable to create a page load animation. And then I would give Lovable a little bit more input, and then the motion and the animation Lovable is creating is always like pretty nice. So Lovable is great in motion. You just go and prompt it and then see what works for you.
Okay, this is a long one. As the design becomes more and more complex inside of a lovable project, more and more layers of code is generated. How do I build complex design in Lovable and not get all of the extra code? So how do you keep your design lean?
That's a good question. So I think the complexity of the code you shouldn't really I don't want to say care about, but I guess the beauty about design is that when you are able to turn something that is really complex into something that's truly simple and easy to use. And so from an interface point of view, I would always try to have as little interface and as little buttons as possible to keep the core actions really clear and not end up having like a cluttered interface just because you have like a lot of code and a lot of functions. And sometimes it also makes sense to hide things that are not too important, like detailed settings or so, and put them rather on like a settings page, like a separate page. Not entirely sure if that answers your question, but I think from a design point of view, at least, make sure that you always turn something that's really complex into something that's truly lean.
And I think that goes great into this next question. How do you prevent button overload?
Yeah. So I think always look at it from, you want to make sure that you have like a super nice hierarchy when it comes to buttons. So I always ask myself, what is the number one thing I want people to do when they are interacting with my website or my app? And that main functionality should be most prominent. And you can usually do that, for example, if you give the button a nice color. Don't use red, because that's usually really alarming, but rather use a color that has a great contrast on the background you're using. So for example, if you have a white background, you can use like a black button or a dark blue button, something that has like a really good contrast on that background. Because then it pops out and people see it immediately. All other actions I would consider as like secondary actions. So they should be less visible than the primary action, but they should still be placed where they make sense. On a mobile screen, for example, it makes sense to place important buttons rather on the bottom of screens because they're more easily reachable with your fingers. On the desktop, I think it depends a little bit on the layout, but usually if you place a button in one of the corners, they're a little bit more visible and give them a little bit more of a better visual hierarchy.
Can you do A/B tests in Lovable? And how would you do them?
A/B tests in Lovable. So what I would actually do is, I think there are different ways of doing it. One would be I would remix my own project. So I would duplicate my project, and then I would basically compare two Lovable projects with each other and basically iterate on both of them and simultaneously collect feedback on both projects at the same time, and then keep on iterating. We're not having A/B tests integrated yet. That's something we're going to launch soon. But I think for now, you can just basically turn it around by like duplicate your own project and then do like multiple iterations on like multiple versions.
Awesome. All right. So this will be our last question, you all. And it is from Ian. What design elements do you feel like should be done outside of Lovable? Icons, graphics, etc.
Yeah, super nice question. I think honestly, everything that makes your product or website truly personal. So I would say Lovable is great in like helping you build a first logo, but even with like iconography or typography, these are the things that make your website truly like unique and personal. And there's so many great typography libraries, icon libraries, and I always look at them outside of Lovable and then prompt Lovable to use those libraries. Or like I would find a typography that I truly love, and then I would give it to Lovable and tell it, hey, can you please, use my own typography? And then with icons, it's the same. There are so many nice and great icon sets. I would source those outside and then use Lovable to integrate it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Felix, for this incredible lecture. Well, where can people find you and connect?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm regularly sharing a lot of like hacks and guides on design and Lovable, or on X, obviously. And just ping me. I usually read my DMs. So go through them and ping me up. And if there's anything I can help, just reach out.
Awesome. So thank you so much, everybody. Give Felix a round of applause inside of the chat. Clap, clap, clap.
Thank you so
Also,
much.
before everybody goes, we do have an assignment, and our assignments are just guiding to help you build your project throughout the 6 weeks. You do not turn them in anywhere. It is not homework, but it should help you keep focused while you're building your project, your startup. So this week's assignment is to build your minimum livable project, right? Your MLP. Yeah, your MLP. Or your toy. It should do one thing really well. It should be functional and solve a problem for your core users and your core audience. You don't have to build out the entire platform and have 50 features. One feature is good. Do one thing really good for your audience. And that's it. I will see everybody later this week for our fireside chat on Thursday. Please feel free to ask questions in Circle. And that is all. Goodbye, everyone. Bye.
I'll just say we're going to send out the prompt guides from Felix as well. We'll get those out to you.
Yes, it will be in the announcements with this recording, prompt guides, slides, all the info you need.